What is up, risk takers? Welcome to the Kill Pete Strategy. I am Pete. I am a top player in Risk Global Domination. I have a daily release on YouTube. I do weekday streams on Twitch. And if you are interested in getting better at the game of Risk, I invite you to subscribe to the channels and come along the ride with me. This is Repeat, and this is our final look at the Russia maps. So this is Russia Advanced. And of the 4 maps that got taken away from the game, this map is, I would say, just it is derivative of the original Russia map. It has more territories, but it's the most similar. That haircut is dope. Yeah, I got a bit of a floof going on, in the front. So this is old Pete. When is this game from? This game is years ago. Now, 3 years ago. This is, I'm pretty sure, the only Russia Advanced example I have on the show. It is Prague World Domination, but it's not an open lobby. This is a 6-player Prague World Dom game with friends, and pretty much everyone in this game is excellent. So we start. Pete, your hero, playing as red. These are the bonuses. So I just want you to take a quick look at the bonuses in Russia Advanced. Pretty much the same. Northwestern is 6, Ural 6, Volga 6, Central is a 4 for 6, Southern is also 6, Siberian with 7, and Far East, for some reason, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 for 4. You explain that one to me. Okay. So, similar map, slightly more territories. The main difference is the east of the board just has more territories. So why are we talking about this map? Well, this is the very end of the Map Master Monday series. I have a 2-year, not the very end. We got a couple more videos, but we are now in the home stretch of the Map Master Monday series. 2 years in the making. I've looked at one map every week, once a week for Prague World Dom. And first of all, I love completing a project like this because it was an ambitious project. It was a 2-year project. And I wanted to talk about the philosophy behind removing these Russia maps. Because in the previous 3 versions, we had the previous 3 episodes of the Russia maps, we've had a game that we can talk about. For the 4th, I want to actually discuss kind of what the philosophy is behind removing the maps from the game, and let's pay it its maximum credit, and let's give it a fair criticism, right? A lot of people have a lot of opinions on SMG's decision to remove these maps from the game, and I kind of want to discuss that all with you and also give my own opinion. So first of all, the what. What happened? When Ukraine was invaded, SMG decided to remove Moscow Advanced, Russia 2010, and Russia 2010 Advanced. 4 maps from the game. Hey, what's up, Chainfire? Thanks, man. Thank you so much, bro. 31 months, appreciate it. Been around for a while. So what were they thinking, right? Let's talk about the what. I think the gesture is that we don't thinking. I think the gesture is Russian here. Listen to every word. Right on, man. The gesture here is that we at SMG don't agree with this thing that is being done, so we are going to make a political statement demonstrating that we don't agree, because we feel it is appropriate, as a business, to make that statement, right? So what is the ethical obligation of a business, right? How many of you guys have taken business ethics? You could say the ethical obligation of a business is to make money for its stakeholders and shareholders. What is a stakeholder, right? Are we global citizens? Hey, Sammy's here. How are you? Venus Fukushima says, I'm a Russian here and I'm listening to every word. I feel like I don't actually feel like I'm going to say too many things here that are all that controversial. The long and the short of it is that removing the Russia maps from the game of Risk Global Domination neither denies the existence of these places nor really causes any sort of positive change towards ending the war. Okay? It is a gesture. It is an action that signals something. The signaling is looking ruggedly handsome. Thank you, Sebi. Too kind. What is the signal? They're saying, we don't like this, we don't agree. Okay, point taken. In so doing, we choose to slightly reduce the amount of fun that our paying customers can have by removing this content from our game. So it doesn't really stand to have a positive effect. And if anything, it has a very, very slightly negative effect. And I kind of want to point to a couple of examples because I see this sort of conflation occur. I don't know what the right word is, and I'm actually looking for the right term. How about we look up conflation? Conflation is defined as fusing, blending, but is often used colloquially as being equal to, treating two things similarly but disparate concepts as the same. Right. And the conflation is that by making this gesture, we will have an impact. And I would argue that, if anything, they have the opposite impact. And I would like to, demonstrate this principle with a couple of examples. The first example is on my comments from last week. So the Moscow Advance video, a gentleman said, very simple sentence, let's not support wars of aggression and terrorism, a very small thing. I would say, I absolutely agree. Let's not support wars. Fully agree. In fact, I don't think anyone does. And I don't think the existence of the city of Moscow or the country of Russia on a map in a map game does so. Do you guys? Is that a reasonable thing to think? Open question, right? That's not a rhetorical question. Do you think the existence of the city of Russia or the city of Moscow or the country of Russia in a map game is inherently political? Because I do not. Also, what is the expected value of the action? Are we going to make a positive change? And if we were, how would we do so? So there was another example that I'd like to show you guys. When I was a kid, there were, see if I can get this. When I was a kid, there were cartoons, and some of these cartoons were quite racist. This is an example of the same sort of conflation I'm talking about. Okay? At some point, Warner Brothers decided to put a disclaimer in front of their cartoons, which I thought was very wise and very well written. And it goes something like this. The cartoons you are about to see are products of their time. They may depict some of the ethnic and racial prejudices that were commonplace in American society. These depictions were wrong then, and they're wrong today. While the following does not represent the Warner Brothers view of today's society, these cartoons are being presented as they were originally created, because to do otherwise would have been the same as claiming these prejudices never existed. Why is this important and why is this relevant? The only way we are going to get through the difficult things happening in the world is if we can talk about them honestly. So, to deny this nation of Russia is to not educate ourselves about it. The Momic says, discussions about war and violence have been so broken on a fundamental and base assumptions level. How you doing, Bionic? Welcome, welcome. Yeah, I think about it this way. What is the expected value of the action. What are we trying to do? All right, Steve says, counterpoint for you, Pete. I make gestures all the time without any expectation that my gesture will have an impact on the subject. Those gestures are merely a method providing a definition of my identity. Sometimes those gestures do not have a positive impact on those around me. I still feel that they're important. So what I'm reading from this is you do things that you know might cause harm to others and you don't care because they're important to you. Is that a summary? Yes, Dad TV. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's fine. I don't think we're obligated to care about others if we want to live alone in a world that is inconsiderate of other people. I kind of do my ethics very personally as well. I think if I had the ability to not cause harm, I would choose to do that almost every time, as long as it's not really at the expense of myself. It kind of goes, I don't want my identity to exist at the expense of another person's identity. That's for sure. But a statement like, let's not support wars of aggression and terrorism, is a conflation. I don't think by playing this video game involving this map is an act of support. And if anything, slightly reducing the amount of fun that all of the paying customers have. Like to give Steve's point, the maximum charity, it's like SMG might do something that they find important to their identity, right? And on a personal level, that makes some amount of sense. Like when I ran a business, it was important to me that my business was apolitical. And I actually think structurally it's very important that businesses are apolitical because it's almost like separation of church and state important, right? You don't want a theocracy, but you also don't want what is it? What do we even have? A kleptocracy? We have a society run by the businesses now, right? So business has become political. Celic says a gesture that has a negative impact on people you don't want to hurt while doing nothing to the people you oppose are not gestures, they're just hurting third parties. Yeah, well, in this case, I think it's a pretty safe argument to make that removing the maps is a hollow gesture, right? So it is really, it ends up really being Steve's point that it is about SMG stating their identity as against this war more than anything else. And that's fine. They can do that. They can choose to take away from you as their customers. They can choose to do that. That is a business decision that I would say is bad. It is a bad business decision, right? Objectively. It is a personal decision. It's an identity decision, right? That might make them feel better. Dad TV says, I disagree with Pete here. I don't want to play a map and see Ukrainian Russian flag player emoting about the war. Okay. Why? Even if the map is good. Why? This is a really good thing to suss out because I do want to pay attention to the same conflation happens in so many different ways. How about creating a map with the pre-2014 Ukraine borders? Yeah, I mean, that's just an infinite regress, right? If you're worried about offending someone to the exclusion of offense, then you end up with nothing, right? Because someone will always be offended since if offense is taken but not given, that's not logical, right? That just is infinitely recursive. Venus says, I am Russian, I play with a Russian flag, so if I use let's attack emote, you don't want to see it in the game. Yeah, the game should be a game. The game is a game. We are adults, right? We aspire to be. Not all of us are adults. I make dick jokes all the time. But we aspire to be adults. And if we are adults, one of the minimum standards that I would hold myself to is that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. So if you are so weak, if one is so weak that the existence of a symbol, verbal or otherwise, the existence of a slur, the existence of a flag, offends you to the point by which you consider it harm, then not only are you holding yourself to an unworthy, weak standard, but you're holding the world to that weak standard, and you make the world worse. And your demands make the world worse. So I would say be very careful of the root of that type of logic, right? If you run a weak standard to its nth degree, what you end up with is the softest, baby-proofed world with no with no friction, but also no bravery, right? Why don't they remove the Chinese maps over the Uyghurs? Why not remove the European maps over colonization? Exactly. You could do it infinitely, right? Humanity, as a rule, is shitty to itself. We are terrible. We are terrible. So you can't pick and choose, right? You can't pick and choose which version of terrible, right? And we are going to continue to fight amongst ourselves until we can grow up and say, yeah, we should probably stop this war thing. How are we going to do that? Kyle said they left the Germany map up. Aren't they anti-Hitler? Yeah, well, I think Kyle's making the joke, but like the lowest standard of conversation you can possibly have on the internet is kind of where we're at. It's like everything I don't like is Hitler. Okay, right? Do you want to hold yourself to that standard? Do you aspire to hold yourself to a higher one? Steve says SMG releasing a statement opposing the war is a choice, but it doesn't have any real weight in the grand scheme. Yes, they're making their statement heavier, but yes, they are. I get it. Would you like to hit me with a stick that says war is bad? Like, how hard do I need to get it? Am I stupid? How dumb am I? Hit me again, right? War is bad. Okay, keep hitting, or did we get it yet? How many times do we have to have the same conversation, right? What we're not doing is we're not having the conversation that progresses to the end. Momik says, I disagree that we're horrible. All living beings use violence and forcibly take over resources. Well, that's just semantic and are compassionate. Sure. I think we're capable of being better as well. My description was the story of history. Human beings are murderous. We can be more specific with the language. Human beings kill, torture. History has a tremendous amount of examples. We are also tremendously compassionate. I love people. Humans are vindictive. Yeah. This is a both and problem. This is why it is important not to conflate. If we could do something to educate future people, what would we choose to do? What action would we choose to embody in the world? That's a great point. Causal trouble. Most of the evil things are done with good intentions. The more you understand about history, the more you realize just how arbitrary culture is. So it is impossible to analyze your own culture from within it. The Aztecs sacrificed their children to Quetzalcoatl so it would rain. Right? We see infanticide. We see pedophilia. We see murder beyond number. All of this was normalized, right? We see gladiatorial combat in ancient Rome. I love the example of the Romans too. The Aztecs are particularly punchy, but like Romans would sit in public toilets next to each other and have a conversation like you and I would sit across the dinner table. These were norms, right? So the normativity of historical societies should give you pause before you run to an immediate conclusion that all of a sudden history has stopped. All of a sudden this society is the correct way, the most ethical, right? You are certainly both and. You are both good and evil. And so am I. I'm not coming at this from a perspective of righteousness. I'm coming at this from a perspective of balance and productivity. What is the actual goal? Steve says, I totally agree with Pete's stance. What type of game is this? It is a war game. It's a dice game. They make an anti-war statement. They're allowed. I want to also be as charitable to SMG's position as possible, right? I want to critique. This is the other thing with internet fucking arguments that drives me nuts, right? Is the mudslinging and the name calling. The best way to understand something you don't necessarily agree with is to pay it its maximum credit. Here is what the argument is. This is the best version of what it is trying to say, and I disagree with it, and I think it is wrong because of this. Right? You have to do it in that way. Will you bring balance to the Force? Yes. The midichlorians. Kyle says the U.S. has bombed how many countries in the last 20 years? How many people from those countries? Yeah, it's something, eh? Could be playing this game and then forced to look at the USA maps and USA flag players. I don't see how that's any different from those defending the removal of the Russian maps. Right. It's war. War sucks. We can put a tag on that. That can be the most important thing we're saying. Right? We all agree that war sucks. We all agree that we wouldn't choose it. And those of us who would choose it, those are the ones we got to be very careful about, right? Mamek says, isn't torture and killing a byproduct of being more intelligent? Bullying and pranks and abuse happen with animals with more complex brains, and humans are persevering to win over them. I'd argue killing used to be one of the more cost-effective ways, arguably with slavery, but we improved. Well, I happen to have a belief that is probably unfounded, that regardless of the fact that we currently need to compete, both economically in terms of markets, but also just the way we progress as a species is via competition, at least in terms of technology. And I believe that in order for us to transcend to our next stage in evolution, we're going to have to figure out how to cooperate a little bit better. Distributed decision-making, I think, is kind of important. If someone can invent a structure by which leadership could be replaced. Ooh, dude strayed. How's the Pete been doing here? It's a cool map. This actually looks great like Prague. You guys see how, for a Prague game with good players, it goes much slower. It's much more multi-positional. Everyone's still alive. Where are we? 20 minutes in. And no one took bonuses. So this is how Prague was played at the top level, say, 3 years ago. Eden Hoo says, I will never understand how people argue if something's right or wrong. If someone gets killed to cause some rich and mighty people aren't able to talk out their problems. Yeah, that's so much of history. Right? Once the talking fails, once the conversation fails, the only resort is violence. How you doing, Orsel? Welcome, welcome. I know you hear this a lot, but this is my first time catching the stream live. I've been watching you on YouTube since 2022, all throughout my engineering degree, and I finally graduated. Much love from Saudi Arabia. How are you, man? Welcome, welcome. Dad TV says, I agree that the U.S. map should be removed following the standard. Can't you also follow that to the nth degree, though? By that rationale, all countries are culpable in some or other way. All maps have to be removed. It's infinitely recursive. Competing is a base way. Yeah. I mean, if you want to talk to me about competition, I've been doing a bunch of work trying to bring Peter Joseph stuff to light in my philosophy forums and otherwise. Yeah, CDEX says the same thing I said. If you follow that standard, it's literally every map, every flag. Exactly. No one can play. Yeah, it deletes. That's why I like the Warner Brothers thing. It's like the presentation of reality has to be, because to do otherwise would be the same as claiming it doesn't exist. We must honor the world that is and not be delusional to the world that we think should be. Palmer says it's about decreasing trauma for Ukrainians, which is a good thing. I've met plenty of Ukrainians who are easily triggered because their hometowns were bombed. Imagine you want to play a game to chill and see a country killed for your friends. That's the trauma comparable many New Yorkers had after 9/11. I don't think I'm being callous. I think I'm being, if anything, overly general. I'm not callous to suffering. If anything, I'm the most strongly advocating against it. What I am saying is there are two methodologies by which you can address your suffering. One methodology is avoidance and denial. This suffering doesn't exist. I don't want to be triggered. I'm going to pretend that Russia's gone. I'm going to hide in my safe little padded room so that the bad guys can't hurt me. That is one of the two ways you can handle it. The other way is through. The other way is to face it bravely, to accept that it sucks, and to try and figure out what you're going to do about it. And I choose the brave road because I've lived the other one. These are lessons that were personally hard fought. I've been weak in my life. I've been afraid. I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to see what the end of the logic is. And I want to see the world that builds. You know? How many rules do you need? Okay, well, we don't have enough rules. Surely the next one will be different, right? We have 20 rules, not good enough. Maybe the 21st rule will fix it. This is the problem. Our society becomes infinitely recursive in this way. Right? We lack the context. We miss the forest for the trees. Poofface says it's tangential, but it reminds me of how every 10 years they release a version of Huckleberry Finn with the N-word removed, and in my opinion, having it in there shows how bad it was for black people during that time, and removing it lessens what it was actually like. This is the conflation. We're trying to protect people from bad things by being avoidant to them or denying their existence. W1Pro9 says, Sevastopol is an Eastern Europe bonus rather than Russia and Europe advanced. Accurate representation of the world helps to control the narrative rather than trying to ignore it. Yeah, man. Maddie says, I remember separating a Croatian and Serbian due to the war at the time. I made it clear that they were in Canada and had to leave that garbage behind. Bo says, I think those who feel that trauma need to try and recognize who caused it or not, where the people who caused it came from. Yes. So this actually segues, Bo, very nicely to the types of reactions I've had from telling people that I am going to move to Florida. Canadians I have found to be very righteous about their superiority, their moral superiority over the Americans. And I know the Americans know that we feel this way, and I know that they find it off-putting. So sometimes I get accused of being too Canadian. And it's funny because I've never really felt quite like I've belonged anywhere. Never really been much of a patriot. Not really big on nationalism. I like to think of myself as a citizen of humanity as much as possible. So when but it also does seem a bit counterintuitive that I would choose to move to a place like Florida, given that it is a place of a lot of turmoil. But the surprise I get most is the sort of question, given the political situation there, how can you choose to make this move? And I say, I don't really presume that their political situation is all that different from ours. And I think we are very heavily propagandized. This goes back to my point about how you have to be very careful about trying to analyze your culture from within it. Becky says, oh God, I was wondering why Pete was in a hoodie on stream. Yes, that's Pete. This is Repeat you're talking to, all right? How you doing? Topi Kiwi, back on Risk. Love from France. Love to you too, man. Citizens of Humanity is a great concept. Yeah, well, I would hope to be. You don't look like a Canadian at all. At least not as Canadian as I know them from South Park. That's right. I need my head to go. I need my mouth to go like this. Rebecca finally gets Repeat. That's what I'm saying. There's Becky, and then there's Rebecky. So, it all kind of makes the same point that I would choose to move bravely into the future if I could. Do we kid-proof the world, or do we try to world-proof our kids? Do we try to educate them such that they see the world for what it is, such that they seek truth, such that they seek to be kind people, but not avoidant and not in denial? Looks like the Peatman's doing all right. Really loved this position on this map, right? It was like a bit of a sneaky kill guard, so you can only get there from these two positions. This always got people. This is, I guess, Kaliningrad? But it appears as if it was an island on this map. The only real difference on the board is the values of the bonuses are slightly different, and then the entire Far East used to be like 4 territories, 5 territories. There's just a bunch more territories in these two bonuses. It's the only real difference. But the bonus values didn't change much on the East. Nickelfinger says, we should allow kids to understand the world and explain to them how the world is instead of sheltering them. Yeah, there's a progression, right? You got to give people... I think sheltering kids is one thing. Protecting adults from trauma is another, right? This is a rough world. I don't think I'm callous to this. I don't think I'm trying to promote more suffering. That's not the argument I'm trying to make, so I hope it's not the argument any of you guys are taking away. I'm trying to be truly compassionate, and sometimes being truly... sometimes the thing that's going to cure how you feel isn't the thing that feels good in the moment. I don't know, I'm kind of suffering, Peter. What are you suffering from? Becky needs some Arby's, I think. Venus Fukushima says, I remember I called myself a citizen of the world when I was 18. I lived in Russia, Europe, and even the US. But you can't ignore the fact that the world has changed. It became more nationalist oriented. Do you think? Am I naive about that? Trying to be fair often makes everyone feel slighted. Yeah, that's true. Tadpole Loop says, I let my kid walk in a parking lot, but the moment there's the tiniest chance he can be in danger, I step in. I'm not going to unleash my child into traffic. Yeah, you got to calibrate, right? It's a matter of degree, very much so. Oh, Bitcoin Church would have loved this conversation. Mamek says, ironically, I've begun to wonder if some suffering is necessary for people to grow. Yeah, it's not only wonder, that's conclusive. Look at Anti-Fragile by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. He wrote a massive book about it. The concept, the word is anti-fragility. So, here, anti-fragile. So, something that is robust is strong and doesn't break. Something that is fragile is weak and breaks. Something that is anti-fragile gets stronger from stress. So that concept that you're articulating here has a word, and he kind of coined it, anti-fragility. Would you please read my long text? Yes, but repost it. How far up is it? Looks like it's quite far. I'm finding it. I still don't have it. I still don't have it, Dad TV. Post it again. It's hard when words mean different things in different lungs. Click his name and messages. Easier to find. Thanks, Noob. I don't even know how to do that. You guys are teaching me how to use Twitch, and it doesn't work. 276 messages. Nice. Oh, that's great. Okay, so Dad TV said, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. He tricked me. Oh, no. All right, we lost Blanco. That was a Spud kill. Good job, Spud. Does the game end here? Looks like we got a few more minutes to go. I'm reading chat and begin to feel like an AMA Russian should happen. I mean, you're chime right in, man. Tell us what you think. I want to know what everyone thinks. I don't know what's true. I barely know what's true for me. Right? It's a lot of work. Maybe I'm holding other people to an impossible standard. Jesus Steve says, compassion is directly under attack in the U.S. It is happening from both major parties. Advocating for compassion no longer resonates with the populace the way it should. That sucks. Why do you think that is? I don't like to hear that. Maddie says, skin thickness is the anti-fragility relationship. The more you go through, the stronger, more resilient you become. No? In some ways. Like, do you guys know the process of repairing a bone? So, like, when you break a bone, a hematoma forms around it, which is essentially like a bruise, an internal ball of blood. And then the blood starts to send all sorts of hardening agents around the bone. And eventually, that hematoma solidifies and calcifies into a massive piece of bone. So your bone will never break in the exact same place twice. And that's anti-fragility in a way. Venus says, in short, you said it yourself, when conversation fails, war is the course of action. And that's basically what happened in terms of the cause of war. Yeah. But like, when are we going to transcend that standard of barbarism? That's a very low bar, right? All right. Dad TV says, StarCraft is only a game. No one gets hurt in those great battles over Lost Temple. No Marines suffer from the injuries he sustains. No killed in action Zergling is wept by his mourning family. There are no secret political reasons for his warfare. No cynical excuses to start the battle. The point here is not freedom, belief, revenge, or money. It is just fun. And fun was never a good reason for war. It is for game. I wish more people would take interest in a game and less in war. I'm with you there, man. I'm with you there. Venus says, it's important to say that I do not support the war in any way, but I understand the why. Okay. Because the conversation failed? Garlex, first time in the chat, it is a loop that humanity's been living since the start. As long as there are sheep, this won't stop. Right. Dave says, for what it's worth, this is a very good discussion to have. And if removing the maps got us here, it's something positive. Yes, I really think that I put a lot of time and effort into coming up with how I was going to talk about this. The Map Master series is not my most popular series. And these videos probably less so because they're reviews, essentially, of a game. Thank you, Nordic Noob. Holy shit, that's a lot of bits. Thank you for the 1,500 bits. Much appreciated, man. I like having difficult discussions, and I know that it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's very much mine. So I'm not coming at this conversation from a perspective of righteousness. I'm happy to share my thoughts. I'm happy to hear yours, as always, as long as they're respectful. That's another thing. The standard of discourse available to people on the internet is sadly quite low. But for those few who have the ability, I appreciate you. Becky says it's weird looking at an old Risk video. Maybe for you. This is my life. Rebecca, who has the good hair. Yeah, we lost Mianbao now. 4-player game. Oh no! We're killing Pete! Don't kill Pete! Stop it! Is Pete going to die? I think Pete is going to die here. Too bad. It was so good there. Maybe he gets a bad roll on the 14. Nice. Just enough. Poor Pete. How could this happen to Pete? Ladies and gentlemen. All right, so the final thing we need to say is, where does this map stack up in the tier list? And it's, I don't know, for whatever reason, more territories is not more really here. I like the Russia 2010 map. I think it's in the A tier. I put it between New Zealand and Australia advanced. And for whatever reason, I don't like Russia advanced. I put it somewhere here. I think it's just above redacted for me. Still in the A tier. They're very similar maps, right? But something like that. Pretty much where I'd place it. So we're almost done, folks. Look at that. We got 3 maps left. The 2 special maps of Archaeos and E-Buy and Buddies. And then we will do, last but not least, the very first original Risk map. Near and dear to my heart is the classic map. And yeah, maybe for the 5-year anniversary show, which is coming up in August, do some kind of like every map review sort of thing. I don't know. I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but I will. I'll think on it some more. And I'll think on this some more too, and I invite you guys all to do as well. When you think about how you show up for yourself and how you show up for the future, what choices you will make that will build the future you want to live in. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found some of it fun and entertaining, maybe even a little bit educational and informative, hopefully not too preachy. And for all of you on the path to world domination, good games and good luck.